It's not lack of money. It's lack of mindset that gets you stuck. It is not the emptiness of your wallet that keeps you pacing the same small circle of existence. It is the poverty of vision that chains your ankles to the ground. And the first act of liberation is to stare that fact in the face without blinking. Look around. History is crowded with men and women who began, broke, yet ended as builders of empires, while countless others inherited fortunes only to watch them evaporate like dew at noon. The difference is not found in bank statements, but in mental blueprints, those unseen architectural drawings that decide whether tomorrow's opportunities become palaces or piles of rubble. Ask yourself with uncomfortable honesty how often you speak about limitations instead of possibilities, how reflexively you calculate risk instead of return. Each such thought is a microscopic shackle forging a larger chain. And when you catch your mind rehearsing scarcity once more, remember that every idea you entertain is a seed plant. Weeds, and you harvest weeds, plant oaks, and you shelter generations. So the pressing question, the one that must echo louder than excuses, is simply this. Do you dare exchange the familiar security of self-pity for the fierce uncertainty of growth, knowing that on the other side of that trade waits the only wealth that can never be confiscated by circumstance? If sudden wealth meets an unchanged mind, poverty simply exchanges its rags for a silk shirt and resumes its quiet sabotage beneath the fabric, for money cannot elevate a consciousness still stooped in fear and self-doubt. Picture the lottery winner who celebrates on Friday only to sign bankruptcy papers 5 years later. His digits grew, yet his decisions remained identical, so his fortune followed the gravitational pull of old habits back to zero. The numbers tell the same cautionary tale again and again. Nearly 7 in 10 instant millionaires lose it all because their thinking is calibrated for spending, not stewarding. Why does this happen? Because wealth obeys psychological laws. It flows toward clarity and discipline, and it evaporates in the heat of confusion and impulse. Ask yourself whether $1 million deposited overnight would merely amplify your current patterns. Would your first instinct be to invest in ideas or to inflate your lifestyle? Every untested assumption about value, risk, and self-worth would suddenly act like a magnifying glass over dry leaves, setting your future ablaze. Therefore, the core paradox is brutal in its simplicity. You can earn riches by accident, but you can keep them only by design, and that design is drafted in the workshop of your beliefs long before the money arrives. And that is precisely why we must now confront the chasm between scarcity and abundance thinking. For the bridge across it decides whether prosperity becomes permanent or fleeting, or true wealth begins in the architecture of an abundant mind, while chronic scarcity is simply the echo of a mind obsessively tallying coins instead of possibilities. When you believe that every dollar must be protected like an endangered species, you shrink the very habitat in which prosperity could flourish. Conversely, when you view money as an energetic current that expands with purposeful circulation, you step into partnership with the laws that govern growth. Study the diaries of Carnegie or Rockefeller before the steel and oil empires formed. Each man rehearsed visions of factories humming and pipelines stretching to the horizon. The wealth we admire was a late-arriving confirmation of a belief system already vast. Meanwhile, the lifelong penny counter clings to small certainties, frightened that generosity or calculated risk will expose him to loss. Yet that caution is the loss itself. He imprisons opportunity at the border of his skepticism. Abundance is not reckless spending. It is disciplined faith that the mind can manufacture value faster than the hand can spend it, a faith reinforced by learning, cooperation, and action. So the pivotal question is not, how much do I have, but how much can I create? And that shift from arithmetic to creativity is the fulcrum on which fortunes pivot. And because creation requires fertile soil, the next step is to ask what seeds of trust and credibility we are willing to sow today. We blunder into the marketplace swinging at every glittering dollar, yet forget that prosperity germinates only in the soil of credibility. Just as a farmer who plows dawn to dusk but never enriches the earth, wakes to barren rows and blames the ground for his hunger. The fever to make cash fast seduces us into short-term maneuvers, overpromising, underdelivering, cutting ethical corners that may score fleeting gains but silently erode the trust that magnetizes genuine opportunity. Consider the countless startups that burn through venture capital by inflating numbers. They attract headlines, yet repel longevity because investors eventually realize the product is thinner than the hype. In stark contrast, captains of enduring wealth from Warren Buffett insisting on reputational moats, to Sarah Blakely, refunding every dissatisfied Spanx customer, treat trust as compound interest. Each honest interaction, each promise kept, multiplies. Social capital that later converts into financial returns no spreadsheet can predict. Ask yourself, would your clients, colleagues, or even friends stake their own reputation on your word? If the answer wavers, no, marketing strategy can rescue the deficit for money, gravitates toward the most reliable steward. Therefore, before chasing another transaction, sow seeds of integrity, service, and partnership, knowing that every dollar earned without these roots is a seed on concrete visible today, washed away tomorrow. And with fertile trust established, we can now turn to the single commanding purpose that channels that credibility into monumental results. Every towering fortune begins as a single blazing command issued from the throne room of the mind, the definite chief aim that orders scattered intentions into one relentless march. Henry Ford was not merely tinkering with steel when he envisioned a car for the common man. He was engraving a mental decree so vivid that the Model T seemed to roar down Detroit streets years before a single assembly line existed. A clear, dominant purpose functions like the North Star for sailors. Without it, you drift in circles pulled by every passing current of distraction. With it, you convert time, talent, and resources into a laser that carves through obstacles that would crumble a diffused will. This is more than goal-setting seminars or motivational posters. It is the solemn drafting of a life-size blueprint complete with timelines, metrics, and the unshakable conviction that no alternative outcome will be tolerated. Ask yourself whether your daily actions cross-examine each other against a written statement of purpose, or whether they roam free like ungoverned horses burning energy but pulling no load. Commit the aim to paper, read it morning and night. Share it only with allies who reinforce it, and you transform desire into a contractual obligation between your present self and your future achievement. And to ensure that contract is honored, you must now summon the inner dialogue that chisels belief into bedrock, the disciplined practice of autosuggestion. The power of autosuggestion is the engine that forges belief into unshakable conviction, and it demands a ritual of intentional self-dialogue each morning and night. When Oprah Winfrey began her rise, she spoke affirmations into existence, declaring worth and vision until the universe and her own psyche could no longer deny them. Jim Carrey famously wrote himself a $10 million check for acting services, rendered dated 5 years in the future, and carried it in his wallet as if payment had already cleared. These are not parlor tricks, but deliberate contracts with the subconscious. Each phrase repeated becomes a beam supporting the bridge between desire and reality. Ask yourself, have you ever noticed how the words you whisper to yourself echo louder than any external praise or critique? Like a radio tuned to a single frequency, your mind broadcasts signals that attract matching frequencies back into your life. Doubt begets dead ends, while confident self-commands draw opportunity like moths to flame. Yet few people treat their inner monologue as seriously as they treat a business plan, allowing fear-laden chatter to erode ambition before it even leaves the starting gate. By scripting powerful present-tense declarations, I am expanding my capacity to create wealth. Every setback fuels my resolve. You recalibrate neural pathways to favor abundance over anxiety. And with your inner dialogue aligned on success, the next imperative is to become a relentless student of knowledge, transforming every page you read into fresh fuel for growth. Continuous learning is the oxygen that fuels every breakthrough, and without it, even the sharpest mind suffocates in stagnation. Consider Elon Musk, who devours books on rocketry, artificial intelligence, and energy storage as naturally as breathing. He regards knowledge not as a burden to repay, but as a capital asset that compounds with each page turned. Contrast this with those who view learning as a chore. They accumulate certificates but not conviction-storing theory, like dusty coins that never enter circulation. True students of success ask penetrating questions. What principle underlies this problem? And then chase the answer across disciplines, forging connections that others miss. Knowledge becomes more than information when it's woven into habit. Like a muscle that grows stronger under consistent stress, your mind expands its capacity only when you challenge it daily. Each new idea is a seed sown into fertile soil, sprouting insights that reshape your decision-making landscape. And because raw information alone cannot erect empires to leverage this intellectual momentum, you must now assemble a mastermind alliance that transforms personal insight into collective genius. No one conquers Everest alone. True wealth is seldom born in isolation, but in the synergy of minds united by a shared vision, and that is the essence of the Mastermind Alliance. When Steve Jobs partnered with Steve Wozniak, they did more than combine skills. They created a mental echo chamber where bold ideas reverberated, collided, and fused into innovations that neither could have conceived solo. A mastermind group is not a casual book club or networking mixer, but a council of equals bound by trust and driven by collective ambition where each member offers unvarnished feedback, resources, and encouragement. Imagine a round table where your most audacious goal is dissected by minds that refuse to accept mediocrity and where tough questions. What's your backup plan, or where is your blind spot ignite breakthroughs instead of bruises? In such an environment, your definite chief aim gains momentum from the intellectual horsepower of others, and your weaknesses become launching pads for strength. Yet few people cultivate this alliance fearing judgment or struggling to justify reciprocal value. Ask yourself who in your circle stretches. Your thinking demands excellence and keeps you accountable. If your answer is silence, you are steering a ship without a crew. So commit to assembling or joining a mastermind. Define clear expectations, agree on confidentiality, and meet with disciplined regularity. Only then will the friction of great minds spark the heat needed to forge extraordinary achievements. Failure is the raw material from which monumental success is forged, and every apparent defeat carries within it the blueprints for the next advancement. Thomas Edison's legendary 1001 failures in inventing the incandescent lamp did not scorch his resolve. Rather, each discarded filament became a step on the ladder to illumination, teaching him precisely what would not work until only the viable solution remained. In the crucible of setbacks, you discover hidden assumptions, refine your strategies, and steel your determination against future storms. Ask yourself, have you ever celebrated a mistake for the lesson it delivered, or have you let a single misstep convince you that the journey is futile? When you reframe failure as the laboratory where resilience is synthesized, every obstacle shifts from a roadblock to a catalyst, empowering you to iterate faster, dig deeper, and climb higher. Like a blacksmith hammering metal into shape. Adversity hammers your character into the contours best suited to bear success. Yet most people view failure as an endpoint, rather than an invitation to experiment anew, and so they abandon their dreams just as the most instructive data emerges. To break this pattern, you must treat each disappointment as a signal to adjust your course, not to abandon it, and to extract lessons with the precision of a surgeon rather than the despair of a victim. Therefore, to harness the energy released by each setback and convert it into forward motion, the next imperative is to embrace the law of deliberate action, turning every insight into a concrete step toward your definite chief aim. The law of deliberate action insists that thought untethered from purpose is nothing more than idle fantasy, and the true alchemy of success lies in devoting at least one focused hour each day to translate vision into tangible steps. Imagine a sculptor who, confronted with a marble block the size of a boulder, chips away at it in small, precise strokes, rather than waiting for divine inspiration to strike. Over weeks and months, the statue emerges, each chip a deliberate act of creation. Similarly, when you carve out time to list your top 3 objectives, break each into micro-tasks. Research 1, market draft, 1 proposal test, 1 assumption. You not only build momentum, but you also rewire your identity from dreamer to doer. Ask yourself whether your most ambitious ideas have ever languished for lack of planning, or if you have habitually deferred action because the gap between conception and execution felt too vast. Every unchecked idea breeds regret, but every measured step compounds into unstoppable forward motion. This habit of consistent, purposeful activity is the bridge between your definite chief aim and reality, transforming lofty aspirations into a series of conquered milestones. And because action without the emotional resilience to persist is like a ship without ballast, the next vital focus must be on cultivating the unbreakable discipline of the heart and mind. Emotional mastery that will carry your deliberate actions across the finish line. Persistence and emotional discipline are the compounding interest of character. For while bank balances ebb and flow with market tides, the mind accrues power through daily victories over doubt and distraction. Imagine 2 entrepreneurs faced with the same setback, a failed product launch. One succumbs to frustration, abandons the plan, and watches motivation drain like water through a sieve. The other assesses the mistake, steadies their nerves, and presses on with unwavering resolve, treating each emotional challenge as a sculptor treats marble, chiseling away weakness until only confidence remains. Ask yourself, when fear whispers that you're not good enough, do you recoil, or do you confront it like a champion, stepping into the ring? Emotional mastery is not denial of feeling, but the sovereign command to feel without being felled, to acknowledge doubt as data rather than destiny. Each time you choose purpose over panic by rising before sunrise to refine your craft, by silencing the inner critic to speak bold affirmations, you deposit micro-investments into your mental ledger that yield exponential dividends in courage. And like a seasoned athlete who logs routine training while others rest, your persistence transforms inertia into momentum, turning obstacles into the very fuel that propels you forward. Chin vive, with your inner resolve fortified and emotions disciplined into allies, you stand ready to grasp the ultimate principle that wealth is born not of gold, but of thought. A truth we will now distill into its decisive declaration. Real wealth is not measured by figures in a bank, but by the mental fire that fuels every decision. For money is merely the scoreboard revealing performance after the game of mindset is won. History is littered with lottery winners who vanished within years, not because the dollars betrayed them, but because their thinking never evolved to steward such abundance. Imagine 2 artists given equal palettes. One sees only colors, the other envisions vast landscapes, and the masterpiece emerges from the clarity of that vision. In the same way, when you shift from lamenting, "I need more cash," to declaring, "I will cultivate expansive thinking," you align every action, relationship, and opportunity with the laws of growth. This is not semantic gymnastics, but a fundamental inversion of cause and effect. Your thoughts are the seedbed, and money is the fruit. By internalizing this inversion, you transform setbacks into stepping stones and resources into raw materials for innovation, ensuring prosperity flows not because you demand it, but because you embody it. Ask yourself whether you chase money to validate thinking or refine thinking to magnetize money. In that choice lies the fulcrum of your destiny. And with this principle carved into your consciousness, the only question remaining is what mindset you will plant today to harvest the prosperity of tomorrow. Every monumental journey begins with a single choice between 2 mindsets, one anchored in fear, doubt, and the comfort of familiar limitations, and the other rooted in bold vision, disciplined belief, and the relentless pursuit of growth. Today you stand at the crossroads of these opposing paradigms. Will you water the seeds of scarcity, nurturing hesitation until opportunity withers? Or will you cultivate expansive thought, fueling faith in your capacity to generate value and attract success? Consider 2 gardeners faced with barren soil. One sees only weeds and wonders why nothing grows. The other envisions an orchard and begins sowing seeds, Which gardener will you be? From this moment onward, every choice, conversation, and habit becomes an affirmation of your chosen paradigm, and the habitual reinforcement of that choice will compound into the reality you live. Remember, you are not a passive recipient of fate, but the architect of your destiny, and the blueprint you draw today will determine the skyline of your financial future. So ask yourself without flinching, which mindset will you cultivate from this moment forward, the one that holds you back or the one that makes you the master of your own financial destiny?